I think this was the only time in my life that I saw Bryn Myrddin not as the home I was eager to reach, but as a mere halting place on a journey. And once I had arrived in Maradunum, instead of welcoming the familiar quiet of the valley, the company of my books, the time to think and to work with my music and medicines, I found myself fretting to be away, all my being straining northwards to where the boy lived, who was to be my life from this time on. All I knew of him, apart from the cryptic reassurances which had come to me through Howell and Hector, was that he was healthy and strong, smaller for his age than Kai, Hector's own son, had been. Kai was now 11 years old to Arthur's 8, and as familiar to my visions as the young prince. But I had watched Arthur scuffling with the older boy, riding a horse that to my coward's eye looked far too big for him, playing at swordsmanship with staves, and then with swords. I suppose they were blunted, but all I saw was the dangerous flash of the metal. And here, though Kai had the strength and the longer reach, I could see that Arthur was quick at the sword himself. I watched the pair of them fishing, climbing, racing through the edge of the wild forest, in a vain bid to escape Ralph, who, with the help of Hector's 2 most trusted men, rode guard on Arthur at all times, day or night. All this I watched in the fire, in the smoke or the stars, and once, where there were none of these, and the messages were straining to come through, I saw it in the side of a precious crystal goblet which Adjan was displaying to me in his palace of the Golden Horn. He must have wondered at my sudden inattention, but probably put it down to indigestion after one of his lavish meals, which to an Eastern host is more a compliment than otherwise. I could not even be sure that I should recognize Arthur when I saw him, nor could I tell what kind of boy he'd grown to be. Daring I could see, and gaiety, and stubborn strength, but of his real nature I could not judge. Visions can fill the mind's eye, but it takes blood to engage the heart. I had not even heard him speak, nor had I yet any clear idea how to enter his life when I did reach the North Country. But every night of my journey from London to Bryn Myrddin, I walked out under the stars, searching for what they had to tell me, and always the bear hung there, straight ahead of me, glittering, speaking of the dark north and the cool skies and the smell of pines and mountain water. Stilicho's reaction when he saw the cave where I lived was not what I expected. When I had left home to go on my travels, since I was to be away for so long, I had hired help to look after the place, and left money with the miller on the Tui, asking him to send one of his servants up from time to time. It was apparent this had been done, for the place was clean and well provisioned. There was even fresh bedding for the horses, and we'd barely dismounted before the girl from the mill came panting up with goat's milk for us, and fresh bread, and 5 or 6 newly caught trout. I thanked her, and then, because I would not let Stilicho clean the fish at the holy well, asked her to show him where the runaway water trickled down below the cliff. While I checked my sealed jars and bottles, making sure that the lock on the chest was untouched and the books and instruments were undamaged, I could hear the 2 young voices outside, still clacking as busily as the mill wheel, with a good deal of laughter as each tried to make the other understand the foreign tongue. When at last the girl went and the boy came in, with the fish neatly gutted and split, ready for roasting, he seemed happily prepared to find the place as convenient and comfortable as any of the houses we had stayed in on my travel. At first I put this down in some amusement to the compensation he had just discovered, but I found later that he had in fact been born and reared in just such a cave in his own country, where people of the lower sort are so poor that the owners of a well-placed and dry cavern count themselves lucky, often have to fight like foxes to keep their den to themselves. Stilicho's father, who had sold him with rather less thought than one would to an unwanted puppy, had been well able to spare him out of that family of 13. His room in the cave had been more valuable than his presence. As a slave, his quarters had been in the stables, or more usually in the yard, and ever since he had been in my service, I was aware that he had lodged in places where the grooms were worse housed than the horses. The chamber he had occupied in London was the first he had ever had to himself. To him my cave on Bryn Myrddin was spacious, even luxurious, and now it promised further pleasures, which did not often come away of a young slave in the sharp competition of the servants' quarters. So he settled in cheerfully, and word soon got round that the enchanter was back in his hill, and the folk came for drugs and paid as they had always done with food and comforts. The miller's girl, whose name was Mai, seized every opportunity to come up the valley with food from the mill, sometimes with the people's offerings which she brought for them. Stilicho, in his turn, made a practice of calling at the mill every time he went down to the town for me, and before very long it appeared that Mai had made him welcome in every way known to her. One night, when I could not sleep, I went out to the lawn behind the holy well to look at the stars, and I heard in the night's quiet the horses moving and stamping restlessly in their shed below the cliff. It was a night bright with stars and a white scythe of a moon, so I did not need a torch. I called softly to Stilicho to follow me, and I trod quickly down to the thorn grove to find out what was disturbing the horses. It was only then that I saw, through the half-opened door, the two young bodies coupling in the straw, that I realized Stilicho was there before me. I withdrew without being seen and went back to my own bed to think. A few days later, when I talked to the boy and told him that I planned to go north soon, but wanted no one to know of it, so would leave him behind to cover my retreat, he was enthusiastic and fervent in protestations of faithfulness and secrecy. I was sure I could trust him. Another gift he had, besides his facility with drugs, is that he is a marvellous liar, and I am told that this too is a gift of his people, so my only fear was he might lie too well, like his horse-trading father, and cheat himself and me into trouble. But it was a risk I had to take. I judged him too loyal to me, and too happy in his life in Bryn Myrddin to put it at risk. When he asked, trying not to sound too eager, when I would be gone, I could only tell him that I was waiting for a time and a sign. As always, he accepted that, simply and without question. He would as soon as question a priestess mouthing in her shrine. They hold the old religion in Sicily, or Hephaestus itself, when he breathed flame from the mountains. I found that he believed every tale the people told of me, and would have shown no surprise if I vanished in a puff of smoke or conjured gold coin from the air. I suspected, like Gaius, he made the most of his status as my servant. Certainly Mai was terrified of me. She could not be persuaded to set foot within the thorn grove. It was just as well for the plans I had in mind. It was no magic sign I was waiting for. If I'd been certain it was safe, I would have set off for the north soon after I reached home from London. But I knew that I would be watched. Ulfa was almost certainly continuing to have me spied upon, and although there was no danger in this, that is, not from the king, but if one man can buy a spy's loyalty, so can another, and there must be many others too, who, even if only in curiosity, would be watching me. So I curbed my impatience, stayed where I was, and went about my business, waiting for the watchers to show themselves. One day I sent Stilicho down with the horses to the ford at the side of the town. Both animals had been shod for the journey from London, and though normally the shoes would have been removed before winter, I wanted my own mare left shod in preparation for my journey. Her girth buckles, too, were in need of repair, so Stilicho had ridden down and was to do some errands there, while the smith looked after the animals. The sky had cleared. The night was still and brightly starred, with a blurred moon throwing blue shadows on the frost. And shadows I saw moving. I stopped dead and stood to watch. 4 men on the flat lawn outside my cave were waiting for me as I returned from my travels. From the thorn thicket below the cliff came the movement and clink of their horses. I could hear the mutter of the men as they huddled together conferring. 2 of them held swords in their hands. Every moment the moonlight strengthened and fresh stars showed in the frosty sky. Far away at the foot of a valley I heard the bark of a dog. Then faintly the clip of hooves coming at a gentle pace. The intruders heard that too. One of them gave a low command, and the group turned and made speed for the path which would lead down to the grove. They had barely reached the head of the path when I spoke directly from above them. "Gentlemen?" You would have thought I'd fallen straight from heaven as a chariot of flame. I suppose it is alarming to be addressed out of the dark by a man they thought they'd just heard riding up the valley. Besides, any man who sets out to spy on a magician starts more than half terrified, and ready to believe any marvel. One of them cried out in fear, and I heard a stifled oath from the leader. In the starlight, their faces upturned looked grey in the frost. "I am Merlin. What do you want of me?" We come from the king. Well, if you come from the king, put up your foolish swords. I'm coming down. When I reached them, I saw they had obeyed me, but their hands hovered not far from their weapons. Which of you is the leader? The biggest stepped forward, civil, but with truculence behind it. He had not relished that moment of fear. We were waiting for you, Prince. We bring messages from the king. We've drawn swords. Well, you are only 4-1 after all. Against enchantment. You should know that my enchantment would never work against king's men. You could have been sure of your welcome. Their feet shuffled in the frost. One of them muttered something, half a curse, half invocation in his own dialect. Well, this is hardly the place to talk. My home is open to all comers, as you see. Why did you not kindle the fire and light the lamps? You should have waited for me in comfort. No one answered. Clearly, where we stood, the scuffed frost showed their tracks up to the cave mouth and back, so they had been inside. Well, be welcome now. I crossed to the holy well, where the wooden image of a god stood, barely visible in its niche, and I lifted down a cup and poured for him and drank. I invited the leader with a gesture. He hesitated, then shook his head. I'm Christian. What god's that? That is Merlin, the god of high places. This was his hill before it was mine. He lends it to me, but he watches it still. I saw the movement I'd been waiting for among the men, hands behind their backs as they made the sign against enchantment. One of them, then another, came forward to take the cup and drink, and spill for the god. I nodded at them. It does not do to forget that old gods walk from the air and wait in the hollow hills. How else did I know you were here? You knew? How not? Come in. Only the leader followed me. What's the matter? Cave is empty, isn't it? Or isn't it? Did you find something amiss when you went in, and you're afraid to tell me? There was nothing amiss. We didn't go in. Well, we went inside. Only a pace over the threshold to see if you were here. The truth is, sir... His story was a long time coming, with many hesitations and promptings, but I got it in the end, still waiting in the cave mouth with the troopers standing around in a half-circle, like wary cattle. It had seemed he, his name was Crinas, and his men, had come to Maradunham a day or so before, waiting their chance to ride up to the cave unobserved. They had had orders not to approach me openly, for fear that other watchers, whose presence the king suspected, might waylay them, and take from them any message I might put into their hands. Yes? Well, this morning we saw your mare tethered outside the smithy. When we asked the smith, well, he said he didn't know where you were, assumed you were somewhere in the town, with business to pursue. He was keeping the mare ready. They imagined that whoever might be... Well, we thought whoever was watching you would be staying there, near you in the town, so we thought we'd come up here now, to the cave. I could feel they were straining to guess my reactions to their story. I said nothing. The man swallowed and ploughed on. The next part of the story had the ring of truth. During their wait in Maradunham they had asked, among other things, idle-sounding questions like the way to the cave, and be sure they had been told with nothing spared about the holiness of the place and the power and awesomeness of its owner. The people of the valley were very proud of their enchanter, and my deeds would lose nothing in the telling. So the men had ridden up the valley, half afraid already. They found, as they expected, a deserted cave. The frost outside still held the lawn blank and printless. All that had met them was the silence of the winter hills, broken only by the trickle of the spring. They lit a torch and peered in through the entrance. They found the cave orderly but empty, the ashes cold. And then? Well, we knew you were not here, sir, but there was a feeling about the place. When we called out and there was no reply, we thought we heard something rustling in the dark. It seemed to come from inside another cave, where the bed and the lamp is. Did you go in? No. Or touch anything? No. We didn't dare. Well, that is just as well. Then? We looked all about us. There was no one. All the time, though, there was that sound. We began to be afraid. There have been stories. One of the men said you might be there watching invisible. I said he was a fool, but there was this feeling of eyes in one's back. Yes. Oh, there would be. Go on. Well, we shouted again, and then they came down out of a roof. Bats. A cloud of them. We were interrupted then. Stilicho had reached the grove and seen the troopers' horses tied there. I heard the shed door slam shut on our horses, and the boy come racing up, dagger in hand. Moonlight caught the blade of his long knife, low and level, ready to stab. Metal rasped as the men whirled to defend themselves. I took 2 swift strides forward, pushing them aside, and bore down hard on the boy's knife hand. No need, they are king's men. Put up. Well, you followed, Stilicho. Shook his head, trembling. A slave is not trained to arms like a freeman's son. Indeed, it was only since we had come to Bryn Mervyn that I had let him carry a knife. I let him go. You were telling me about the bats. It sounds to me as if you had let the stories trouble you overmuch, Quinas. If you disturbed the bats, they might certainly alarm you for a moment, but they are only bats. That was not all. The bats came down out of a roof, somewhere in the dark, went past, like a plume of smoke. The air stank, but when they had gone, then we heard music. Stilicho, standing close to me, stared at them, wide-eyed. I saw they were making the sign. Music all around us, soft, like whispering, running round and round the wall of a cave in an echo. I'm not ashamed, my lord. We came out of that cave and we did not go in again. We waited for you outside. With swords drawn against enchantment, I see. Well, there's no need to wait longer in the cold. Won't you come in now? I assure you you won't be harmed, as long as you do not raise a hand against me or my servant. Stilicho, go in and kindle the fire. Gentlemen, no, don't try to go. Remember, you've not given me the king's message. They were not dressed in the uniform of the king's regular troops, no badge or blazon. They might be taken for armed troops of any petty leader. They certainly carried themselves like soldiers, and though they paid Quinas no obvious deference, it was apparent that there was a difference of rank between them. I surveyed them, the leader sitting stolidly, the others fidgeting under my gaze. I saw one of them, a thin, smallish man with black hair and pale face, still surreptitiously making the sign. You have come, you tell me, with a message from the king. Did he charge you with a letter? Letter? No. Only to convey his greetings and ask after his son's welfare. Why? Why, my lord? Yes, why? I have been gone from court 4 months. In that time the king has had reports. Why should he send you now to me? He knows the child is not here. It seems obvious that he would not be safe here. The king also knew that I would wait at Bryn Mervyn for a while before I left to join Prince Arthur. I expect to be spied on, but I find it hard to believe he sent you with such a message. Well, all right. Yes, you smoked us out. Well, I didn't hope to get away with a thin tale like that, not with you. It's all I could think of, when you surprised us like that. So, you are spies. I still want to know why. Will you have a drink? Thank you. You know, sir, who better? What kings are, eh? It wasn't for us to question when we were told to come here and look the place over without letting you see us. The others nodded, agreeing anxiously. And we did no harm, my lord. We never came into the cave. That much was true. No, and you told me why. Well, I don't say you don't do right to be angry. I'm sorry. I mean, this is not our normal business, as you'll guess. But orders are orders. What were you ordered to find out? Nothing special. Just ask round. Take a look. Find out what you're doing. It's my understanding that there was a lot you hadn't told the king, and he wanted to find out. Did you know he had you followed the minute you left London? Well, I guessed that. Ah, fair. It's a way kings have, trusting nobody, wanting to know everything. It's my belief, if you'll excuse me for saying it, my lord,
Yes, I think the king didn't believe you when you told him about where you were keeping the prince. Maybe he thought you'd shift him and keep him hidden like before, so he sent us on the quiet, hoping we'd find some clue.
Perhaps. Wanting knowledge is a disease of kings. Speaking of that, is there any worsening of the king's health which might have made him suddenly anxious for news? I saw, as clearly as I had said it, that he wished he had thought of that himself. He hesitated, and decided that where it could be told, truth was safer. As to that, my lord, we've no information. I've not seen him myself lately. They say the sickness has passed and he's back in the field. Well, that tallied with what I'd been told. I said nothing for a while, but walked thoughtfully. Grinnes drunk, with an assumption of ease, but his eyes were wary. At length I said, "Well, you have done as you were bidden, and found out what the king wanted. I am still here, and the child is not. The king must trust me for the rest. As for where I am going, I'll tell him in my own good time."
That's an answer we'd sooner not take, sir.
Look, we'd better go. We don't want to make him angry. I'm not angry. You're doing your duty. It's not your fault. The king trusts no one, but must have each story ratified twice over. You may tell him this. Yeah? His son is where I told him, safe and thriving, and that I am only waiting for good weather to make the voyage. Voyage? Come now. I thought all the world knew where Arthur was. In any case, the king will understand.
Yeah, we knew it's only a whisper. It's true about the island, then. Shush.
Quite true.
He's at High Brazel. Surely that's a myth, saving your presence.
Well, now, I didn't give it a name. I'm not responsible for whispers. The place has many names, and those stories are told about it enough to fill the 9 books of magic, and every man who sees it sees something different. When I took Arthur there... Excuse me, my throat is dry. Oh yes, when I took Arthur there, you know the child was handed to me 3 nights after he was born. Well, I took him to a safe place. Then, when the time was right, and the world quiet, I carried him westward, to a coast I know. There, below the cliffs, is a bay of sand, where a rock stands like the fangs of wolves. No boat or swimmer can live where the tide is breaking around them. To right and left of the bay, the sea has driven arches through the cliff. The rocks are purple and rose-coloured and pale as turquoise in the sun. And on a summer's evening when the tide is low and the sun is sinking, men see on the horizon land that comes and goes with the light. It is the summer isle, which, they say, floats and sinks at the will of heaven, the isle of glass, through which the clouds and stars can be seen, but for which those who dwell there is full of trees and grass and springs of sweet water. The Isle of Maidens, where kings are carried at their endings, and there will come a day,
"My lord, I've seen it!"
This was the pale man at the back. That he should interrupt a prophet apparently on the point of prophecy showed a nerve-scraped roar.
"I've seen it! When I was a boy I saw it! Clear as the Castrides on a fair day after rain. It seemed empty as a land."
It is not empty. And it is not only there when men like you can see it. It can be found even in winter for those who know how to find it. But there are not many who can travel to it and return.
"Then he's on Cornish land."
You know it too?
No. I have heard of it. Is this the message we have to take back to the king?
At a movement of his head, the others rose with him, and Stilicho set the wine-jug down with a clatter. I shook my head and laughed. It would go hard with you, I think, if that was all I asked you to take back, and hard with me to have fresh spies sent on me for all our sakes. I shall set his mind at rest. Now will you bear a letter back to London for me? Grinnes stood for a moment, his eyes fast on mine. Then he relaxed, his thumb hooking into his belt. When I heard his breath of relief, I knew how near he had been to questioning me further in the only way he knew.
"Willingly, sir."
And if you wait just a little while longer, fill their cups, Stilicho." The letter to Uther was brief. I began by asking after his health, and wrote that, according to my private sources of information, the prince was well. As soon as the spring came, I told him I intended to travel and see the boy too. Meantime, I would watch him in my own way, and send the king all the news I had. After I'd sealed the message, I took it back to the outer cave. The men had been talking quietly there in undertones. They broke off as I came in, and got to their feet. I handed the letter to Crinas. "Anything else I have to say is in the letter. He will be satisfied. Even if your mission did not work out precisely as he orders, you've nothing to fear from the king. So, if you would leave me now, the god of going watch you on your way." They went at last, perhaps not so grateful as they might have been for my invocation. As they hurried out across the frost, I saw the quick sidelong glances into the shadows, and the hunching of cloaks around their shoulders, as if the night were breathing on their backs. As they passed the holy well, every one of them made a sign, and I do not think that the last one, Crinas, made the sign of a cross. The sound of a horse's hoofs dwindled down the valley track, and Stilicho came racing back from the cliff above the grove. "They've all gone. My lord, I thought they were going to kill you." "It was possible. They were brave men, and they were frightened, and that's a risky combination, especially as one of them was a Christian." "Meaning he didn't believe you?" "Meaning just that. He was sure he didn't believe me. But he wouldn't have staked anything on it being a lie. Now, you find some food, Stilicho, will you? Doesn't matter what, but you better hurry. Put together what you can for a journey. I'll see to the clothes myself. Is the mare ready?" "Yes, my lord, but you are going tonight?" "As soon as I can. This is the chance I've been waiting for. They have shown themselves, and by the time they find that the trail I've given them is false, I shall be gone, vanished to the island beyond the west. Now, you know what to do. We've talked of it many times." This was true. We had planned that when I went, Stilicho would remain at Bryn Mervyn, fetching and carrying supplies as usual, keeping up for as long as he could the illusion that I was still at home. I had built up a store of medicines, and for some time now I had let him compound the simpler ones himself, and dispense them to the poor folk who came up the valley, so that they would not suffer by my absence, and it would be a little time before anyone would raise a question. We might not gain much time in this way, but I should gain enough. Once I was across the nearer hills, and had reached the valley tracks in the forest, I would be hard indeed to follow. So now Stilicho merely nodded, and ran to do as I bade him. In a very short time the food was ready, and while I ate he packed together what I would need for the journey. I could see he was bursting with questions, so I let him talk. I could talk to him haltingly in his own tongue, but mainly he got along with the fluent but heavily accented Latin. Since we had left Constantinopolis, most of his natural lively spirits had flowed in my direction. He had to talk to someone, and it would have been cruelty to insist on the silent respect which Gaius had tried to instill. Besides, that's not my way. So as he hurried about his tasks, the questions came eagerly. "My lord, if that man Crinas did not really believe the tale of the Isle of Glass, and he had to have the information about the prince, why did he go away like that?" "He went away to read my letter. He thinks the truth will be in that." "But he'd never dare open a letter for the king? Did you write the truth in it?" "Oh, Stilicho, and what is truth? Do you not believe the Isle of Glass?" "Well, yes. Everyone knows of it. Even in Sicily we know of the invisible island beyond the west. But that is not where you are going now. I would stake anything on that." "Why so sure?" "You, lord? Across the western sea? In winter? I would believe anything but that. If you could use magic instead of a ship, we would have journeyed more easily in the Middle Sea. Do you remember the storm off Pylos?" "With no magic but mandragora? Yes, I do too well. You're quite right, Stilicho, of course. And naturally I gave nothing away in the letter, thank you. The letter will never get to the king. They were not king's men." "Not king's men? How do you know? Did you know them?" "No, but Uther doesn't use troops to spy. How could he hope to keep them secret?" "These are troops, yes, sent as Crinos said, to ask questions in the market and the taverns in Maradunum, and then to search this place while we were out, and find, if not the prince, some clue to him. They weren't even spies. What spy would dare go back to his master and say he'd been discovered and had been given a letter to carry for his victim? I tried to make it easy for them, and it's possible they think they deceived me. But in any case they had to take the chance and get their hands on the letter. I give Krenas best. He's a quick thinker. When I caught them at it, he did well enough. It wasn't his fault that the other man gave him away. What do you mean, my lord? The man with a pale face. I heard him say something in his own tongue. I don't think Krenas heard it. He was speaking in Cornish. And later, when I spoke of the Isle of Glass and described the bay, he knew it. These are islands off the Cornish coast, ones in which even Krenas must believe. Cornish? It is from Cornwall, in the southwest. Queen's men, then? Stilicho listened almost as much as he talked, and had regaled me continually since we left Euphra's court with what they were saying about every subject under the sun. They said she was still in the southwest after the lying in. That's true, and she might use Cornish men for secret work, but I think not. Neither the king nor the queen keep Cornish troops close to them these days. There are Cornish troops at Carlion. I heard it in the town. Are there indeed? Under whom? I don't know. I could find out. No, the less you know about it, the better. Leave it now. They'll stop watching me the length of time it takes to read the letter, and by the time they find someone who can read Greek... Greek? Of course. The king has a Greek secretary. I didn't see why I should make it that easy. And I doubt if they know I suspect them. They'll be in no hurry. Besides, I put something in the letter to make them think I would stay here till spring. Will they come back? I doubt it. What are they to do? Come back and tell me that they read the king's letter and are not king's men? As long as they think I am here, they will be afraid to do that, in case I report to the king. And they dare not kill me, and they dare not let me find out who they are. They will keep away. As it is, the next time you go into Maladunham, see that a message is sent to the garrison commander to watch for these Cornishmen, and tell him to report what has happened to the king. I will send a message myself. We may as well use his spies to guard us from others. Right, I finished that. You packed the food? Well, fill the flask now, will you? Meanwhile, if anyone does come up here, what is your story? That you have been out daily on the hillside, and that you went last towards Abba's Valley, and that I think you must be staying to help him with the sheep. They won't believe that. No? Accomplished liar like you? Be careful, you're spilling the wine. But a prince would not help with sheep. It's not likely. I've done stranger things. They'll believe you. And it's true. Where do you think I got the bloodstains on my cloak today? Killing someone, I thought. That doesn't happen often, Stilicho, and usually by mistake. If those men had drawn their swords on you, my lord, would you have stopped them with magic? Well, I hardly needed magic, with your dagger so ready. I haven't thanked you for your courage, Stilicho. It was well done. What, you're my master? I bought you for money. I gave you back your freedom. What sort of a debt is that? He merely looked at me without understanding. There, it is all ready, lord. You want to pack your thick boots and the sheepskin cloak? Shall I get Strawberry ready while you dress? In a moment. Come here. Look at me. Now, I have promised you that you will be safe here. That's true. I see no danger coming, not for you. But once I am clear away, if you are afraid, go down to the mill and stay there. Yes, lord. Don't you believe me? Yes? Then why are you afraid? The music, my lord, that they spoke of. What was that? Was it really from the gods? In a way. It is my harp. It speaks sometime of itself when the air moves. I think that's what they heard, and because they're guilty, they were afraid. He glanced over to the corner where the big harp stood. That one? But lord, it is muffled against the air. No, not that one. That harp stays dumb till I touch it. I meant the little one I travel with. I made it myself here in this cave, with Galapus the magician to help me. I have not seen it since we got home. Where do you keep it? Well, I was going to show you anyway before I left. Come, boy, there's no need for you to fear it. You have carried it yourself 1,000 times. Get a torch, come with me. I led him to the back of the main chamber. I've never shown him the crystal cave. and because I kept my chest of books and my table across the rough rock shape that led to the ledge, he had never climbed that way and found it. Now I motioned him to help me shift the table, and holding the torch high, mounted the shadowy ledge where the crystal cave lay hidden. I knelt down at the entrance and beckoned him towards me. The torch in my hand threw firelight, glimmering through moving smoke, round the globed walls of crystal. And here, as a boy, I had seen my first visions in the leap and flash of moving flame. Here I had seen myself begotten, the old king dead, the tower of Vortigern built on water, the dragon of Ambrosius leaping to victory. Now the globe was empty, but for the harp which stood there, with its shadows thrown clear round the sparkling walls. I glanced down at his face. Awe was stirring in it, even at the empty globe and the empty shadows. Listen, my voice stirred the still air, and the harp whispered, and the music ran humming round the crystal walls. I was going to show you the cave. If ever you want to hide, hide here. I did myself as a boy. Be sure the gods will watch over you and you will be safe. Where safer than right here in the god's hand, in his hollow hill. Now, go and see to Strawberry. I shall bring the harp down myself. It's time I was gone. When morning came, I was 15 miles away, riding north through the oak forest which lies along the valley of Okothi. There is no road there, only tracks, but I know them well, and I know the glass-blower's hut deep in the woods. This time of year it is empty. So I and my mare shared its shelter half that December day. I watered her at the stream, and threw fodder that I had brought into a corner of the hut. I myself was not hungry. There was something else for me to feed on, that deep excited feeling of lightness and power which I recognized. The time had been right, and something lay ahead of me. I was on my way. I drank a mouthful of wine, wrapped myself in Abba's sheepskins, and fell asleep as soundly and thoughtlessly as a child. I dreamed again of the sword, and I knew, even through the dream, that this came straight from the god. Ordinary dreams are never so clear. They are jumbles of desires and fears, things seen and heard and felt through unknown. This came clear, like a memory. I saw the sword close for the first time, not vast and dazzling like the sword of stars over Brittany, or dim and fiery as it had shimmered over the dark wall in Igraine's chamber. It was just a sword, beautiful in the way of a weapon, with the jewels on the hilt set in a gold scrollwork, and the blade glimmering and eager, as if it would fight of itself. Weapons are named for this. Some are eager fighters, some dogged, some unwilling, but all are alive. And this sword was alive. It was drawn, gripped in the hand of an armed man. He was standing by a fire, a campfire, lit apparently in the middle of a darkened plain. And he was the only person to be seen in all that plain. A long way behind him I saw, dim against the dark, the outline of walls and a tower. I thought of the mosaic I had seen in Ajahn's house. But it was not Rome this time. The outline of a tower was familiar, but I could not remember where I had seen it, nor even be sure that I had not seen it only in dreams. He was a tall man, cloaked. The dark cloak fell in a long, heavy line from shoulder to heel. The helmet hid his face. His head was bent, and he held the sword naked across his hands. He was turning it over and over, as if weighing its balance, or studying the runes on the blade. The firelight flashed and darkened, as the blade turned. I caught one word, king. Then again, king, and saw the jewels sparkling as the sword turned. I saw that the man had a circle of red gold on his helmet, and that his cloak was purple. Then, as he moved, the firelight lit the ring on his finger. It was a gold ring carved with a dragon. Father? Sir? As sometimes happens in dreams, my voice made no sound. Yet he looked up. There were no eyes under the peak of the helmet. Nothing. The hands that had held the sword were the hands of a skeleton. The ring shone on bone. As he held the sword out to me, flat across the skeleton hands, a voice that was not my father's said, "Take it. 'Twas not a ghost's voice, or the voice of bidding that comes with vision. I have heard these, and there is no blood in them. It is as if the wind breathed through an empty horn. But this was a man's voice, abrupt, accustomed to command, with a rough edge to it as comes from anger, or sometimes from drunkenness, or sometimes, as now, from fatigue. I tried to move, but I could not, any more than I could speak. I've never feared a spirit, but I feared this man. From a blank of shadow behind the helmet, the voice came again, grim, with a faint amusement. It crept along my skin like the brush of a wolf's pelt felt in the dark. My breath stopped, my skin shivered. He said, and now I clearly heard the weariness in his voice. "You need not fear me, nor should you fear the sword. I am not your father, but you are my seed. So take it, Merlinus Ambrosius, or you will find no rest until you do." I approached him. The fire had dwindled. It was almost dark. I put my hands out to the sword, and he reached to lay it across them. I held still, though my flesh shrank from touching his bony fingers. But they were not there to touch. As the sword left his grip, it fell through his hands, and through mine, and between us to the ground. I knelt, groping in the darkness, but my hand met nothing. I could feel his breath above me, warm as a living man's, and his cloak brushed my cheek. I heard him say, "Find it! There is no one else who can find it." Then my eyes were open, and it was full noon, and the strawberry mare was nuzzling at me where I lay, with her mane brushing my face.